A big blow for the Tigers, the surprise packets grabbing our attention and the disappointments under the spotlight. Plus, we'll dissect that after the siren thriller in Sydney. All that and more coming your way. This is Access All Areas thanks to Crypto.com.
Oh, there's a big climb! Top of the square, Cam Rayner.
To win the game for Sydney on the final siren. Did it make the distance?
He's about to pounce, gets there. Owens, the seat goes marching in. Phenomenal.
Great to have your company. Damien Barrett and Matthew Lloyd join me. Good morning to you both. All right, let's get started. And we have to start, of course, with Tom Lynch because the Tigers star is going to be sidelined for a couple of months with a fractured foot. Damo, what is this going to do to their chances of making finals, do you think?
I feel it ruins them, that, for what it's worth. I'll get Lloydie's take on the footy side of it in a moment, but for him to go down at this early stage of a season, he's got the match review office issue to also contend with as we speak, and there's far bigger problems, Lloydie, aren't there, when it comes to where Richmond has positioned itself. Only the 6 premiership points out of the 16 available to it to this point of the season, and a few worries, particularly out of the weekend's loss to the Bulldogs.
Yeah, they really look to be a middle-of-the-road side, Richmond. I know at the start of the year, it's probably where I felt they'd be, around that eighth mark, just scraping in or just missing out. I just feel, apart from their ball movement, which can be electrifying at times, what's their point of difference? I think their back line looks undersized and inexperienced at times. The midfield got smashed on the weekend by the Bulldogs, and their forward line now, Revolt left out as a sub. You've got Tom Lynch now out for 2 months, and Samson Ryan at ground level just wasn't up to it on the weekend. The
back line which you referred to, and obviously the injuries to it. I mean, Broad's been out suspended. You've had Short unable to play since round 1 as part of that back line sort of workings. Tarrant is again injured, and Gibcus, who showed some signs last year, not available. So the problem's obviously now with Revolt being left out of the team, managed, dropped, whatever word you want to use. The club used the word managed. We'll touch on that issue later in the show, Nat. But, yeah, issues big time.
And you mentioned the tribunal. Well, he's been sent straight there, has Tom Lynch, for this collision which left Alex Keith concussed. I'm actually not sure how to feel about this one, Lloydie. What's your take on it?
I think he's up against it, and he may well have been very much just looking to protect himself with the way Alex Keith was coming back at the ball. But I just think that without making an attempt to even go for the football, he may have said I misjudged it and all those sorts of things, but I just think when you knock a player out like that and you didn't make a clear attempt to go for the ball...
Take us into that moment, Lloydie, as a key forward, when that moment comes and you know you can't contest the mark the way you'd like to. What do you need to do to get through where you don't come out of it with a match review office issue?
I just think that you need to, and I remember there was an incident between Plowman and, Plowman knocked out a player a couple of years ago, where it was a Hawthorn player, and you just got to put your arms up. You've got to make an attempt, put your knee up and your arm up. If you don't do that, you don't look like you're making a clear attempt.
Even if you hurt them with a knee?
Yeah, that's right. A knee is fair in this sense, unless it was just crude and you're driving your knee with nowhere near the footy. But in that attempt, I just think he needs to put his knee up, his arms up to protect him. I think he'll definitely get a suspension. Obviously, it won't matter too much. Goes against his record, but he's going to be out anyway.
Staying with concussion, and this will be one of the biggest stories that's going to dominate headlines this week, and it's Paddy McCartin, because the Swans defender suffered his 10th concussion. It was a devastating sight on Saturday night. What happens next from here, Damo?
No, it is devastating sight to see that and the ramifications for that innocuous incident. And, you know, some narrative around it, Nat. No one's trying to retire Tom McCartin, and it is a sensitive issue. Sorry, Paddy McCartin, yeah. It is a sensitive issue, and it's awkward to talk about. But when someone's got already, before that moment, 9 documented concussions in the game, when he didn't play for 3.5 years prior to that moment, and then when he comes out of that game with another concussion, you know what the ramifications for the conversation are. And the ramifications are, does he play again? It's OK, I think, for us to talk about that in a footy context, because the Swans do have the ultimate care for him. They subbed him out of the game without putting him even through the concussion protocols.
Where do you sit this morning on it? Do you believe that we may have seen the last time he plays?
I honestly do, Lloydie, and I don't want people close to Paddy to think, we're talking about this from a football perspective. He didn't play for 3.5 years. We have got a raft of litigation now being subjected to the game too. Hundreds of millions of dollars are going to be coming out of the game over the next X amount of years. If we, as an industry, allow someone who's now had 10 concussions to go back out without proper diligence around his situation right now, well, you know that's going to be used against the club, the people at the club. I mean, there's already litigation in place from a Western Bulldogs perspective with Liam Picken that has some of the onus going back to the doctors who make the decisions on these matters. And again, it's awkward to talk about, and I would hate to be the McCartin family right now. I'd hate to be John Longmire right now. I'd hate to be Paddy McCartin right now.
So does the AFL have a role to play? Can they step in and say, ultimately, sorry, you can't play anymore?
I think they have to, Nat. I think it's only natural that they do. I mean, they are being sued now with all of these actions being taken against them. And if they were to, at some stage in 10 years down the track, say, this guy's had 10 concussions, and guess what? He came out again 2 weeks later and had another one. Now, that's the if component to Paddy McCartin. It doesn't make it easy for us to talk about it, but I'd be staggered if these conversations aren't already being had at the highest levels of both Swans administration and whoever's involved from an AFL perspective.
Lloydie, put yourself in his shoes. You're in 20s and footy is your life. It's all you got at this point, and I'm sure he feels like he's defined in a way by his footy career as a person. It would be hard to let go of.
I would be, for sure, and I think that's where he's fought hard. He would have been told a number of times. We spoke pre-show about Will Pekoski. They would have been told countless times, you're not playing again, you just stop, go do something else. But it's everything to them. It's what they've dreamt of. And if your doctors tell you that you're OK to play, I think that would override anything. And that's what I think I'd put my full faith in, the doctors and the brain specialists. And if they told me I could still play, well, I'd still fight for that career.
Oh, it's a really complicated situation, and we do wish Paddy and Tom, who actually, his brother got concussed as well, we wish them all the best in the coming weeks. To the West, and last night the D's were dominant against an undermanned Eagles side. Not too much to take out of this, apart from the fact, do we think that Melbourne, Lloydie, is the #1 team to beat in this competition right now?
I think so, yeah. I think that's what I like about him is May and Lever back together. I think the midfield is just powerful, dynamic. Pickett back in, exceptional again. And the forward line just seems to have a few more options, even, you know, Chandler and Van Rooyen. There's a lot of different options there for them. And
McDonald back in with Brown out. And Lloydie, weirdly enough, Gawn's absence is actually helping this Brodie Grundy transition into this team, isn't it? Without him being there, he's now being forced to fast-track his own Melbourne belongings.
That's where he was at his best at Collingwood, when he was the #1 man, and now he's doing the same. He looks a more confident player when he can assume the whole ruck mantle himself. So maybe Gawn can play a lot more forward as well when he gets back.
It's going to be a selection headache for Simon Goodwin when Gawn is fit and ready to come back. Extraordinary scenes at the SCG on Saturday night. I'm sure this vision has been watched about 1,000 times over and over. Ollie Florin obviously had the shot at goal after the siren. And, well, we all know that Callum Mills celebrated a little bit too early and left the goal line. But what else should be highlighted here?
Well, to take us through it, I mean, Callum Mills did, as Nat alluded to, get criticised for leaving his space. I think the ball was dropping enough for it to have been guaranteed to be touched by someone anyway. But is there anything the Swans could have done in that moment that they clearly didn't do?
Well, their positioning probably. They should have more players. There's 2 players at the Sydney Swans area on the point post. They should be in the goal square as well. 4 or 5 of them all should have been there, just trying to push back as hard as possible.
And hope.
And hope. But it probably wouldn't have helped at all. I think the biggest story is the vision we're about to show if Port had a loss this game.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So take me through, Lloydie, now. What Port did to allow the fact that Heaney and Florent were free?
Well, some of the question marks has been around Port Adelaide's midfield, and do they work hard enough? Do they spread hard enough? And here's the last moments. It's 30 seconds to go. Port kicked that ball forward. Rampy's the only player there. This is the 3 Port Adelaide players who have highlighted on the far left, and then there's Lyle Florent who's on the right, who's just drifting back. So they just stopped. They're fatigued. But this could be the difference between whether you play finals or not. So they just switched off, and it left Florin. It was a beautiful kick by Rampy into the corridor, but then that has left Florin out the back. So I think we would have been highlighting this more so, and it would have been a bigger story if Florin had to kick the goal, how Port switched off for a split second, and it nearly cost them the 4
Not
points.
trying to defend it, but I think they had nothing physically left.
They've
at that
always
moment.
got something, Damon. I've never seen someone die on a footy field before.
They looked absolutely cooked. You, Lloydie, were at Marvel Stadium to watch your Bombers on the weekend, and they beat the Giants in what was, a fairly error-riddled game. But the barrel from Jake Stringer. How'd you like that one?
He made the game. He made the game. It was a pretty average game of football. First half was just full of errors, skill errors from both sides. So they're 3 wins and 1 loss, Essendon, but they're going to find out a lot about themselves. Melbourne this week in Adelaide and then Collingwood on Anzac Day, where I don't think they're good enough to beat those sides with the football I've seen them play. But it's just great to start a season well. But this man, Damo, he made the game. This is Redmond also a very good player.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're going...
He went the early crow too.
Yeah.
Well, what I love what they've done with Stringer and what Brad Scott's done with Stringer is allow him to be as close to fully match fit when he finally released him. Now, he could have rushed him back for round 1 or 2, and I think historically, both at 2 footy clubs, he may have been brought back in those situations. This year he wasn't. Now, I don't think he's fully match fit right now, but the matches he's played, he's had impact.
Amazing talent, and you just hope that he can put a full season together again, like he did a year or 2 ago, and he could be the best Bomber player there.
It was a tough day, really, for the Giants forwards because the delivery inside 50 wasn't really any good to them. But, Damo, if you're Jesse Hogan, I know that it's frustrating, you're not getting a lot of looks, but arguing with the umpire whilst the ball is still in play and alive, it's probably not really working for him
No,
either.
it's not. I don't know how Dyson Heppel dropped that mark, by the way, but Jesse Hogan doesn't go to Dyson Heppel. He goes to the umpire in a way that you're not really meant to be doing these days by way of remonstrating anyway. And his man runs off him in Cole Langford, and then again, Nat, and again, the game's over here, and I get that, and the frustrations have kicked in, but he's nowhere near the contest, and he's also, again, remonstrating with umpires in ways that I would imagine that Adam Kingsley, who was frustrated at 3/4 time of this game, will not be happy with. I keep trying to defend Jesse Hogan, but you can't at times when he's behaves like that.
Yeah, that vision's pretty damning. 4 rounds in, and we've got 2 clear surprise packets, and we've got 2 disappointments, and it just so happened they all played each other at the weekend. We'll start with the positives and the Adelaide Crows, 2-2. I'm not sure any of us thought that this would be the case, but they're gearing up for a huge Thursday night clash against the Blues to kick off Gather Round. And, Lloydie, they've got a selection headache, really, when it comes to their attack as well. Yeah, they've got
Fogarty, Pedler and McAdam all due back, and that's what good sides do. They have pressure on selection, but they've always been a side that's had a crack under Matty Nicks. They've had the odd bad game, but now they've just got star factor, and that's why they're so good to watch. So they've got that aggression, and their attack at the footy is brilliant. Their tackling is relentless. But now they've got Rankin, Phil Thorpe that's doing his thing. Rochelle, Tex is just a freak in terms of his skills are as good as any key forward probably that's played the game. I think
Dawson's leadership and role within the team. Smith still having the effect. And the star factor component now, that's the bit that's absolutely come out of nowhere with me. I found them quite a boring and a tedious team to watch, but yet almost instantly they've become must-watch.
Yep, they're super entertaining. The other surprise packet is St Kilda, 4-0, undefeated under Ross Lyon, top of the ladder. Is there any reason they can't continue this run and feature in September, or, Damo, are we waiting for the bubble to burst?
Well, we're going to know, aren't we? I feel that this week when they play Collingwood, and I'll reserve judgment for that particular moment, Nat. And I'll tell you what, though, if they get through that game against Collingwood, and they do get a relatively vulnerable in this particular contest, look, I won't be ruling them out for what it's worth, but Lloydie, you take us through. You've still got some doubt.
Well, I don't know if there's that many great sides. To be honest, the sides they've beaten aren't amazing, like Fremantle, the Western Bulldogs, Essendon and the Suns. They're not amazing, but I don't think there's that many great sides out there. So I think now, I still thought the bubble could burst enough to miss the 8. Now I just think they're going too well to miss the 8. I believe in everything they're doing, how organised they are all over the field, and players to come back. So they're in a great spot now.
To the disappointments now, and that is Fremantle and Gold Coast. We'll start with the Dockers. They're 1-3 after making finals last year. The coach, Justin Longmuir, wants you to forget that they make finals, but the reality is they did, and they're struggling.
Well, you can't forget it because they fell just short of making a double chance in the finals, and then they won a final to win 16 matches in the year. You then get to the next year, and to compare it with what Adelaide Crows are dishing up by way of the excitement, they've gone the other way. They've regressed in an excitement perspective, and I think it's affected the way some of them are playing.
They look shell-shocked, lack confidence, belief, energy. A lot of players down on form.
And what about the Suns? Because so much hype, Lloydie, about them and making finals. This had to be the year, and they've been a complete disappointment, in particular what they dished up on Saturday night.
Well, the only hype in my eyes, before you answer it, Lloydie, has come from from the club itself. I don't get hyped about the Suns, and yet again, I'm getting reason not to be.
Yeah, they regressed to a point where I said it was like footy from their first 2 or 3 years. That's how bad they were after quarter time with some of their efforts on the weekend.
So the sub rule has caused a little tension across the weekend when it comes to managing veterans. Essendon clearly looked like they wanted to avoid the attention and the headlines of downgrading Dyson Heppell by pulling a late change and making him the sub yesterday, while Tigers coach Damien Hardwick, well, he expressed his annoyance at the rule when naming Tigers champion Trent Cotchin as the sub.
For some unknown reason, he was always within the 23, but we've got to name people out of the 23 for God knows what reason. I'm not too sure. So it'd just be nice if the AFL could do something about that so it doesn't create a big story, if that makes sense. I think it's ridiculous that we've got to do it and we need to get it fixed. It's farcical that we've got to do it, really.
Thoughts on this? Because you can actually name your sub well in advance, can't you?
Other clubs name the 23rd player in advance. Look, there's a 5-point loss coming on the back of 2.5 losses already for the year. Look, Damien, if he wanted to just say Trent Cotchin's going to be the 23rd man on Thursday night, he could have. Yeah. He chose not to. He said he was managed. And I think that's the issue. Other clubs name
But
it.
Thursday to Saturday is a long time, so I actually like his suggestion of name a 23 and then you can name your sub an hour out before the game. So you just name your 23 on the Thursday, and then the coach can decide who he wants to be.
But they do anyway, Lordy. They make late changes anyway. I mean, Brad Scott yesterday took Dyson Heppell out of the 22 and made him the 23rd, but he left him in the 22. We knew he was going to play.
But when are you saying you have to name the sub, though? Because, say, for example, I would have had Samson Ryan the sub when it got wet. So you might want to make that sub really late. You don't want to name him on a Thursday night. You just name your 23.
But you can do that. The rule doesn't prohibit the late change, does it? I mean, not the way I know the rule.
Yeah, but you're saying just name your sub. Other clubs have done it. Yeah. That doesn't work for a lot of clubs in certain situations.
All right, let's go back to Thursday night at the Gabba. And what did you take away from that game, Lloydie? Because it looked as though maybe there's a bit of a blueprint on how to beat the Pies.
Well, the best team I've seen do it is the Sydney Swans. They've done it a couple of times last year where they stopped the rampaging Pies through their pressure and their frontal pressure. And this is what they did. They just kept forcing the Pies backwards at times. And sometimes they got out, but they caused turnover, and they are going forward at a rate of knots. You see Johnny Noble, they have so many of them do it, and then they've got forwards out the back. That's why Cameron kicked 6 and Rayner kicked 4, because they got out the back of them. So players coming in from the side and stopping that run.
You obviously need to be disciplined to play this, because you're not going to get them every time. But this is a great selection of highlights from this game, given the comments post-match by Fagan.
Yeah, it was. So brilliant pressure, great win. They're so hard to beat up there, but I still believe with no ruckman, and then having McStay and Ash Johnson having to ruck, then they've taken their forward line away from them as well. I think there's an adjustment period that they need. We're off. I thought they were right off Collingwood in terms of their players on the field, just taking time to adjust to Darcy Cameron.
Time now for our Crypto Brave play, and this week it's Crow Lockie Murphy who put his body on the line, and he gets the honours this week. Damo.
Again, Nat, there's so much to like out of what the Crows are doing, and we've just highlighted the excitement machines. This, though, will be something Matty Nicks, I think, raises Lordy as prominently as anything Rankin or Rochelle.
That's why they're playing so well with efforts like that, Nat.
Speaking of Rankin, there was this little goal celebration moment that I want to get your takes on with Tex Walker. I'll be honest, this reminded me of when my dad's trying to be cool in front of my mates and it just fails miserably. You two had any of these experiences with your
someone
kids?
Who didn't do a bridal waltz at his own wedding. Now, leave me out of the conversations around any dance moves, but this man can get up there.
Oh, yeah.
I saw you on a table topless about a week ago, dancing.
Oh dear, we should leave it there for Access All Areas for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again next Monday. Enjoy the week.